Have you ever noticed how the modern world seems obsessed with power, and at the same time, terrified of silence? We live in an age where influence is measured by how many eyes are on us, by the noise we make, by the followers we collect like trophies. Power today is almost always performative. It must be displayed, proven, performed. Yet Nietzsche whispers an unsettling truth, that the highest form of power is invisible, unspoken, cultivated in silence within ourselves. This idea unsettles us because it dismantles the spectacle of domination we've been taught to admire. From an early age, we are told that to be powerful is to rise above, to command, to be recognized. But Nietzsche invites us to face a paradox. True strength is often hidden, subtle, silent. A power that does not rely on applause, but on the discipline of becoming what we truly are, even if the world never notices. The question is simple, yet radical. What if the most powerful human is not the one who conquers empires, but the one who conquers themselves? Nietzsche lived in the 19th century, yet his insights pierce and expose the anxieties of the 21st. Today we are surrounded by manuals on how to achieve power, financial, social, sexual, political. We are immersed in strategies to conquer others. But this obsession masks the most dangerous question. What if all this pursuit leaves us powerless exactly where it matters most? In our own souls? Nietzsche's quiet trick isn't about subjugating the crowd, it's about stepping away from its demands. He shows us that power, in its purest form, is not theatrical. It is the courage to remain alone, the resilience to endure pain without yielding to despair, the capacity to say yes to life even when it denies us everything we thought we needed. Consider how we experience power in daily life. For most, it is confused with recognition. A promotion at work, public validation, a relationship that affirms one's worth. Yet this insatiable hunger for approval is precisely what makes us fragile. We hand over control of our self-esteem to others. Our happiness becomes delicate, dependent on forces we can never fully control. Nietzsche saw this dependence as a disguised form of slavery, a comfortable cage built from applause. Perhaps that is why so many of us feel empty. We trade the dangerous freedom of being who we are for the temporary security of another's gaze. But what if we broke this cycle? What if we stopped craving an audience, stopped depending on the noise of validation? What if we cultivated a strength that grows in silence, invisible yet unshakable? Nietzsche dares to claim that the most radical power is not the kind displayed before a crowd, but the kind that remains secret, intimate, untouchable. A private victory known only to the one who carries it. The person who conquers themselves no longer needs the world's approval, and for that very reason the world can no longer enslave them. Here lies the paradox that unsettles the modern soul. Silence, which we often associate with weakness, can be the truest form of power. To resist the need to appear, to sustain oneself when no one is watching, to transform suffering into strength without displaying it to the world. None of this reveals frailty but an extraordinary inner force. Nietzsche knew that few can endure this kind of solitude. Most prefer to dissolve into the herd, to get lost in the collective noise, to shy away from the terrifying independence of silence. And yet, it is in this silence that true potency takes root. If we look honestly, we'll see the trap everywhere. The rush to post, the constant comparison, the desperate search for signs that we matter. It's exhausting, and it never ends because approval is fleeting. Today's applause becomes tomorrow's indifference. Nietzsche invites us to escape this cycle, to discover a power that depends on no one's permission. He challenges us to occupy the most uncomfortable place, to be alone, unrecognized, and yet whole. And so, before we dive deeper into Nietzsche's thought, there's a question that must echo. What if the loudest form of power is also the most fragile? What if true strength does not announce itself, but grows quietly, invisible to the crowd, yet undeniable to the one who carries it? Perhaps the silent trick isn't to shout louder, but to be unshakably yourself, even when no one is watching. Nietzsche did not see power as common sense does. Wealth, status, titles, political influence. To him, these were mere fragile masks, illusions crafted to hide the absence of inner strength. The real danger, he said, lies in confusing appearance with essence, glitter with substance. In modern society, this confusion has only intensified. Today, power has become a spectacle. The number of followers on social media seems more important than the quality of life itself. A high-ranking position may confer prestige, but often conceals a life marked by emptiness, exhaustion, and lack of purpose. We create external symbols of power that function as crutches for a weakened soul. Nietzsche called this the morality of the herd, a way of living guided by collective approval rather than individual authenticity. To the herd, the powerful are those who obey the unwritten rules of social play, consuming what everyone consumes, desiring what everyone desires, displaying what everyone applauds. But this power is unstable because it depends on external judgment. The moment the crowd changes its mind, the powerful becomes irrelevant. The will to power, a central concept in Nietzsche, is not about dominating others, but about expanding one's own life. It is the vital force that drives us to grow, to create, to surpass our limits. The modern mistake is believing that the will to power means external control, when in truth it is an inner movement, the energy to transform, to become more whole, more real, more free. We only need to look at how the logic of external power plays out in our days. The young person who measures their worth by the number of likes. The adult who sacrifices years of life in a meaningless job to earn a title or buy a car that impresses. Relationships built not on affinity, but on the need to show the world that one is desired. All are prisoners of symbols, mistaking applause for life itself. Nietzsche denounced this theater. To him, anyone who seeks only recognition is, at their core, weak, because they rely on others to feel they exist. The truly strong person does not need to be seen. Their power is not measured by external eyes, but by the intensity of their own inner life. And here lies the shock. We live in an age where inner life is nearly worthless. Silence is uncomfortable, solitude is treated as a disease, introspection is confused with weakness. We are urged to be always visible, always active, always connected. Yet this constant exposure does not strengthen us. On the contrary, it leaves us ever more vulnerable to the opinions of others. Nietzsche saw in this game a psychological prison. He challenges us with an uncomfortable question. Are you living to expand your own life or merely to be seen? Are you cultivating your inner strength, or simply feeding symbols of power that can vanish at any moment? Nietzsche's true critique is not against power itself, but against its caricature. He does not ask us to renounce greatness, but to rediscover where it truly resides. External power can be stolen, destroyed, or forgotten. Inner power, cultivated in silence, is the only form of freedom that no one can take from us. Perhaps this is why Nietzsche is so unsettling. Because his philosophy strips away the mask and exposes how fragile we are when we depend on what we cannot control. And at the same time, it offers a key, the possibility to transform life into a work of personal affirmation, rather than a performance for the eyes of others. What does not kill me makes me stronger. Perhaps Nietzsche's most famous phrase, repeated until it became a cliché, yet rarely understood in its depth. For him, it wasn't cheap motivation but an existential law. Life inevitably wounds us, but it is precisely through these wounds that we can transform into something greater. Nietzsche believed that pain is not an accident to be avoided, but a raw force to be shaped. He saw suffering as raw material, something that, if it does not destroy us, can be transmuted into power, creativity, and courage. This is the quiet trick, not to deny suffering but to incorporate it, digest it, convert it into vital energy. The logic is almost alchemical. What for many is poison, for the strong spirit can become nourishment. Every rejection, every failure, every loss can be transformed into strength, if we do not run from it. Suffering, Nietzsche said, is inevitable. But how we respond to it is the measure of our greatness. In contemporary psychology, this insight finds resonance. Viktor Frankl, a survivor of Nazi concentration camps, said that humans can endure anything, as long as they find meaning in suffering. Frankl called this post-traumatic growth, the ability to use pain as fuel to expand consciousness and find purpose. Gabor Maté in turn shows how denied, repressed, or masked pain turns into illness. Only when we face our wounds directly can we metabolize them into something more. Nietzsche went even further. For him, fleeing from pain was fleeing from life itself. Amor fati, he said, love your fate. Not just accept the inevitable but say yes to it even when it brings suffering. This attitude is not resignation but audacity. It is choosing to embrace life in its totality, light and shadow, pleasure and pain, and in doing so become more whole. If we think about it, this is the opposite of today's culture. We are taught to anesthetize suffering with distractions. Consumption, digital dopamine, promises of instant happiness. But in trying to escape pain, we lose the chance to transform it. Modern life offers quick relief but robs us of depth. Nietzsche proposes the opposite. Dive into discomfort, endure it, move through it, because only then can something new be born from within us. Imagine pain as a crushing weight. For many it paralyzes. But for the one who uses it as resistance, that same weight becomes exercise, training, and strength building. This is the quiet trick. Instead of being destroyed by suffering, we use it as the very forge that makes us stronger, more authentic, more untamable. What Nietzsche teaches us is that pain can be the greatest ally of our individuation. Each time we face what once seemed unbearable and survive, we discover a new layer of ourselves, something that didn't exist before. And this something cannot be taken, cannot be given by anyone because it is born from the most intimate experience, surviving your own hell. This silent power is unlike any external power. It does not need applause because it is won in the solitude of our inner battles. It does not need to be displayed because it is felt. It cannot be stolen because it is etched into the flesh and soul of those who have walked through fire and emerged transformed. And perhaps this is why Nietzsche still unsettles us. Because deep down we all carry pain we try to avoid. And he looks us in the eyes and asks, why do you run from what could be your greatest source of strength? Few things frighten Nietzsche more than collective mediocrity. To him, humans possess immense creative potential, yet almost always choose the safety of the herd over the adventure of becoming unique. It is more comfortable to walk together, think together, believe what everyone else believes. The crowd protects, but it also suffocates. And it is in that suffocation that the illusion is born, that belonging is power when in fact it is submission. Nietzsche called this the morality of the herd, the tendency to level everyone down, to value obedience, conformity, mediocrity. The masses fear difference because difference exposes their fragility. That is why anyone daring to think independently is seen as dangerous, strange, even insane. The free spirit, this figure Nietzsche describes, is the individual who finds the courage to separate from the crowd. They need no crowd to validate their existence. Their strength comes from the risk of walking alone, of holding convictions even when they are ridiculed. It is this free spirit who can aspire to what lies beyond the human, the one who transcends inherited limitations and becomes a creator of new values. But consider how this sounds in the contemporary world. We live in an era where the pressure of the crowd doesn't come only from the public square, but from the screens in our pockets. The internet, which could be a space of freedom, has become the new arena of the herd. Opinions spread in swarms. Fear is no longer just of judgment by neighbors, but of being cancelled by millions of strangers. Obedience, once enforced by institutions, is now reinforced by the vigilant gaze of the digital crowd. And here emerges the paradox. We have never had so much formal freedom, of expression, choice, identity, and yet we have never been so trapped by the need to belong. It's as if the herd has discovered new ways to colonize our minds, disguising obedience as participation and conformity as freedom. Nietzsche, were he alive today, would likely see this as the triumph of herd morality on a global scale. Because for him, true individual power does not lie in echoing what everyone else says, but in sustaining one's own voice even when it sounds dissonant. It is in solitude, not applause, that authenticity is born. But this comes at a cost. To stand against the crowd is to endure the pain of not belonging. It is to be misunderstood, attacked, excluded. It is to face the desert that opens when no group is there to protect you. And it is precisely this desert that Nietzsche calls fertile ground for creation. The silence of solitude is the space where we can forge our own values, free from the chains of the majority. Deep down, Nietzsche knew, it is far easier to lose oneself in the crowd than to confront the abyss of being oneself. Yet he also knew that only in facing this abyss does true strength arise. It is in this solitary, silent, and perilous act that a human ceases to be merely another and becomes a creator. And perhaps this is what frightens us most today, the idea that the greatest act of power is not to conquer the masses, but to have the courage to need them no longer. Let us return to the question that opened this reflection. What if true power does not lie in dominating others, but in mastering oneself? After journeying through Nietzsche's ideas, perhaps we can see this paradox more clearly. The power the world displays, status, symbols, applause, is always unstable, always fleeting. It can be taken away in an instant, dissolved by the crowd's changing opinion, erased by the indifference of those who once applauded. This is noisy power, yet fragile. The power Nietzsche speaks of is of another kind. It requires no stage, no witnesses. It is born when we transform suffering into strength, when we dare to think against the herd, when we stop seeking approval and choose to remain true to ourselves. It is an invisible power, yet unshakable. The quiet trick, after all, is not a secret hidden in the pages of Nietzsche's books. It is a possibility that has always been before us, to stop begging for worth in the eyes of others and start planting roots within ourselves. To accept fate, even pain, and transform it into fuel to live more intensely and authentically. This power is invisible because it does not need to be proven. It manifests in silence, in the calm of those who depend on no recognition, in the courage of those who endure solitude, in the freedom of those who no longer bow to collective approval. It does not shine under spotlights, but it pulses within the soul of the one who carries it. And perhaps that is why it is so rare. Because it demands what we fear most: being alone, facing pain, challenging the herd, giving up applause. It demands a fidelity to oneself that cannot be negotiated. Yet those who walk this path discover a form of freedom that no one can take away. Nietzsche does not give us easy answers. He does not offer a manual for happiness. He points us toward a harsher horizon, to live without masks, to say yes to life even in its cruelty, to transform every fall into a silent ascent. This is the power that cannot be bought, inherited, or granted, only earned. And so, we return to the beginning. What if true power were invisible? What if the deepest strength is the one that needs no display but simply exists? Perhaps life is this: an invitation to stop seeking power where everyone else seeks it, and start finding it where almost no one dares to look, within oneself. If you enjoyed this video, if it made you reflect, subscribe to the channel and continue this journey of deep exploration into the mind and life. There are many more paradoxes to uncover.